hurting? You can hear me, yeah?
Okay, this noise is coming from your end?
Yeah, there is construction. They will finish soon, inshallah.
Oh, yeah.
They are doing outside, some work.
Yeah, Bismillah. No problem.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-ali al-azim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Allahumma akhrajni min dhulumat al-wahm wa akrimni bi nur al-fahm. Allahumma aftah alayna abwab rahmatik wa anshur alayna khaza'in ulumik bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to continue our study of the book Insaan Kamil, Perfect Man, by Ayatollah Mutahhari. Last week, we started discussing the idea of people like Nietzsche, who think perfection is just a matter of power, and they have their own definition of power. So this is the second session that he had, Ayatollah Mutahhari had on this thought. And here he has a recap and then he continues. He says, according to Maktab Qudrat, according to a school of power, perfection is a matter of power, a strength, and imperfection is just a matter of lack of power, weakness, incompetence. So for them, good means strong, bad means weak. He says in philosophy, normally they talk about Kamal and Naqs. And for them, this is very important topic, comes everywhere, especially when they talk about Quwwa and Fi'l, about Haraka, about Wajibul Wujud, about existence in general. They say that perfection is an existential quality, and when you go to the higher degrees or ranks of existence, there is more perfection. And one of the things that they mention as perfection is power. Therefore, when they prove the existence of Wajibul Wujud, necessary being, and start with the attributes of Wajibul Wujud, they prove power as they proved knowledge and life. Power is one of the qualities of God because it's a perfection. In Kalam, in the science of Kalam, instead of talking more about perfection and imperfection or Kamal and Naqs, they talk more about Husn Qubh, means goodness and badness. Those who have studied Kalam, they know that we have lots of discussion in Kalam about Husn Qubh. In Bab Hadi Ash, Alhamdulillah, we discussed this. In Kashful Murad, we discussed this, that Husn Qubh is the basis for many, many discussions about free will, about Jabr, about Qa'idiyya Lutf, many, many things. So there is an issue of Kamal and Naqs, there's an issue of Husn and Qubh, depending on whether you are more dealing with philosophy or Kalam. And in Akhlaq, we talk also a lot about goodness and badness, or intrinsic goodness or badness, or aqli, husn qubh aqli, rational, intellectual goodness or badness, all these things. And in Akhlaq, we also talk about justice and injustice, adl wa zulm. And we say that justice is one of those values, if not the only one, at least one of the values, which is very fundamental, which has no exception, and according to the late Sheikh Muzaffar, is the complete cause for goodness. So all these concepts, Kamal and Naqs in philosophy, Husn and Hub in Kalam, Adl and Zulm in Akhlaq, for example. For the people like Nietzsche, all is a matter of power and weakness. They don't see any other thing, as if there is no other progress, no other success for any human being except to become more powerful. So Ayatollah Mutahhari says, let us evaluate this school of thought. The first issue that he mentions is this, that they take power as the only value. If they had said that power is one of the values or one of the important values, one of the central values, we could agree with this. But to reduce every perfection, every virtue to just power is not agreeable. So the first problem is why you limit it to power. But there is another problem. The second issue with this school is why you also take power only to mean physical strength. For example, in an animal, what is power? What is the power in elephant? What is the power in, for example, a horse, for example? The power is more a matter of physical power, ability to move, ability to either move other things or move themselves. How fast they run, how much they can move other things, they can lift things. It's a physical power, or according to Ayatollah Mutahhari, it's the power that is coming from muscles. It's not the power that comes from their intellect. Maybe they have some power in understanding through perceptions. For example, some maybe have power in smelling, I don't know, in seeing, in hearing. But all is for body. So it seems that people like Nietzsche have kept the same meaning of power that we use for animals for human beings. And they think a powerful human being is the one that can rule, can defeat, can destroy others, and things like this. So we say power is much more than this. Yes, this can be one meaning of power or one dimension of power, but it's not the only. For example, if a human being is strong in body, that's good. If through a sport, through exercise, through diet, through a spiritual life, you can be stronger in your body, that's good, that's great. But is this the only dimension of power in human beings? So here he starts a discussion about what he calls a spiritual power, or the power of spirit. قدرت روحی. If you translate it literally, it means spiritual power. And you can say also power of spirit. He starts with a hadith, a well-known hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Once in Medina, he was passing by some youth, and they were exercising and maybe had competition on lifting heavy rocks. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them, do you want me to be the referee, to be the judge between you? And of course, they were very happy and said, for sure. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them, Ash'a'un nas man ghalaba hawa. The bravest, the strongest people in their will, in their bravery are those who can dominate their own whims. If you can overcome your own temptations, that's the main power. Power of muscles is good, but if you don't have good will, then you will be easily used by bad people. They use you in order to silence, or I don't know, heat, or na'uzubillah, kill, for example, their enemies, you know, weak people, etc., to create, you know, fear among people. You have to have power of the spirit, power of the will. So this is another dimension of power which actually is more important for human beings. Ayatollah Mutahari says, in Islamic ethics and in our mystical literature, there is emphasis on power, on bravery. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ash'a'un nas man ghalaba hawa." Ayatollah Mutahari doesn't mention this in the story, but if my memory is not wrong, I think even over there Rasulullah said this, "Ash'a'un nas man ghalaba hawa." He mentions this as a second hadith. Zadi, the famous poet, says, "Garat az dast barayad dahani shirin kon, mardi an nist ke mushti bezani bar dahani." If you are powerful, if you are able to do something, make someone happy. It's not a sign of being a man, means being brave, to punch someone's mouth. Why you don't make them feel sweetness of life? Why you don't make someone happy? If you are powerful, make people happy, not attack them and, you know, destroy them and hit them, etc. Mawlavi says, وقت خشم و وقت شهوت مرد کو، طالب مردی چنینم کو به کو. Ku has different meanings. One meaning of ku means, where is he? Where is it? Another meaning is ku in the sense of kui, lane. So he says, in the time of anger, tell me who is a man. Man is not just having mustache or beard. Man is not just having a strong muscle. When someone is angry and can control and suppress his anger, this is bravery. This is a man. Of course, for women also the same, but in, you know, those terms, you know, they were talking especially for men, you know, about power of men, you know, physical power. The focus for women was not on power of muscle. And he wants to correct that even for men, it's not power of muscle that is the main thing. It's the power of resisting against your temptations. Waqt shahwat. Khash means anger, shahwat means, you know, whims, appetites, bad appetites, lower desires. So if you want to understand who is a strong person, look how they deal with their anger, how they act when their lower desires are triggered. طالب مردی چنینم کو به کو. From every lane to another lane, from every street to another street, I am going in order to find such people. You can easily find people who have physical strengths, but to find people who have spiritual strengths, that's difficult. So you have to be able to have a strength to act ethically, to act religiously, to act spiritually. And Ayatul Mutahiyya says, of course, you have to be also careful not to mix this with being emotional. Because some people are too emotional. They say, we have to be kind to everyone. Even to criminals, for example, we should not do anything. There should be no, for example, prison or, punishment. It's not that they say punishment has to be just. Yes, everyone says punishment has to be just. But to say that there must be no punishment at all, this is then not going to work. Ziyadi says, ترحم بر پلنگ تیز دندان ستمکاری بود بر گوسفندان. If you are showing kindness to, for example, tigers who want to attack the goats and sheep, then this is zulm to those animals. If there is a wolf, if there is a tiger attacking your herd, you have to protect them, not to say, okay, I want to be equally kind to them. Let everyone does what they want. So this wolf is going to kill many of them. In the society also, we cannot say, okay, we want to be good with everyone, we want to be kind with everyone, we don't want to be, against anyone. No, we have to follow principles, values, justice, but all with control over our emotions and over our anger. We shouldn't get angry and do too much against, for example, criminals. Even if a criminal is arrested, they should be dealt with justice and with human dignity. That's correct. But to say that we just let them be free, we want to be kind, it's not going to work. So power is very comprehensive in Islamic understanding. Part of it is physical strength. Part of it is spiritual. Part of it is a matter of your understanding and especially your control over your own desires, temptations, your anger, your appetites. What makes a person very powerful is when they are able to wholeheartedly deal with everything and do what is right with the least of resistance from inside. That's the power. So if there is a weak, there is a vulnerable person that needs my help, if I can do this with the least of resistance, that's the sign of power. And if there is an unjust oppressor that I need to stop him, either by talking to him or using other methods which are ethical and religiously accepted. Power here means to do this with the least of fear and worries and again resistance from inside. So power comes in dealing with people that you want to support or dealing with the people that you want to stop. It's very comprehensive. And part of it is inside, to form a sound judgment and to choose the right methods and instruments and means and be able to focus on this. Because sometimes we decide to do something, but we are so much undecided inside and so much, worried and have hesitations inside that our energy is drained. It's very important that after you properly assess and after consultation, thinking, asking, whatever is needed, when you make up your mind, then do it wholeheartedly. فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Before making decision, if you need, take your time, consult. But then after making decision, you should focus on performance. And of course, have an open eye and ear. If you see that there was a mistake, you can reconsider. But not that you are still sure that you have to continue, but think, and this is going to drain your soul. Ayatollah Mutahari says some people then have gone to the other side of extreme, opposite to Nietzsche. And, they say, we should not, have any kind of punishment for the criminals, etc. And he says, this is also not going to work. There are people that unless there is a fear of punishment, they may not stop. Then he talks about قدرت واقعی, real power and real strength in our hadith. Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam told his children, Kuna lidhalim khasma wa lil-madhlum awna. When it comes to the unjust and oppressors, you should be against them. When it comes to the oppressed, you should be supporting them. Aun means help. So it means that you must not do zulm, number one. Number two, even if other people have done zulm, you must not be supporting them or even be indifferent. You should stand for the justice and help the people who are oppressed. Imam Hussein alayhi salam also is quoted as saying, Al-Qudratu tudhhibu al-hafiyah. He says this is a very beautiful saying, and it's based on understanding psychology of human beings. Imam Hussein alayhi salam says, a strength or power removes hatred. When you are weak and someone has done something bad to you, you suffer a lot and you keep this in your heart and memory forever. You are not able to let it go. When you feel powerful and strong, first of all, you don't easily feel offended. And even if you feel offended, you don't develop hatred. Someone who, this has many, many examples. For example, as a teacher, if you are new to teaching and you are worried and you are not sure about your performance, you have no confidence. When any student asks a question, you are worried. Maybe he wants to ruin my reputation. Well, maybe he wants to damage my position in the eyes of students and this school, etc. Because you are internally worried, you think everyone is against you or likely to be against you. Quran says about hypocrites, يَحْسَبُونَ كُلَّ صَيْحَةٍ عَلَيْهِمْ. They think every person who is screaming is against them. Every person who is shouting is against them. When a thief sees any machine, is worried, especially if it's a police machine. They think, oh, maybe they have gone to arrest them. So in a similar sense, when I am new to teaching, when I'm new to giving lecture, when I'm new to member, I'm worried. And if someone has an honest question and asks me, I think maybe, he has a hidden, agenda. Maybe he wants to prove me that I am not capable, I'm not qualified, etc. I'm very worried. But if I am established teacher, I'm established lecturer, and I'm confident, then I don't feel offended when people ask me questions. I don't feel worried when they ask me questions or suggestions, or even if they make criticism. I say, thank you very much. Because I am confident. I know that I am qualified. And either this criticism is in right place or not. It's not right place, okay. That's fine. It's not going to hurt me. And if it is the right place, okay, I benefit from it. I have no worry. It's really affecting our performance and our emotions when we internally are confident or strong. Some managers, when they are not confident, they make such a, bad decisions, such bad decisions that sometimes, every person that flatters them, they promote them. And those that, are a little bit critical or, honestly, they make, suggestions different from the manager's ideas, they try to get rid of them. So Imam Hussein alayhi salam says, al-qudrah, strength, power removes hatred. Or Ayatollah Mutahari quotes from Amir al-Mu'minin about backbiting. Who are the people who commit backbiting? He says, al-ghibatu juhdul ajiz. Ghiba is the maximum thing that an incompetent person may do. If you are powerful, if you are able to bring lots of good things to this world, you don't waste your time and energy on backbiting someone who is not present. But someone who is not able to do anything, he starts gossiping or complaining or nagging or backbiting, things like this. These are not going to bring positive changes. He says even about fornication, about adultery, Amir al-Mu'minin says, Ma zana ghayurun qattu. If someone has ghira, if someone has what in English may be translated as protective jealousy, a kind of feeling that you feel that you have to protect those things which are valuable. If someone has ghira with respect to his own mother, sisters, wife, daughters, would not commit adultery. So this is the power of a person internally that stops him doing bad things. But Nietzsche doesn't recognize any kind of power except physical power. And this is the second problem. That why you reduce power to only one type of power. So the first problem was why you reduce every value to power. And the second is why you reduce then power to only one type of power. The power of muscle or the power of weapons and swords and soldiers and army. This is all one type of power. Power of ruling over bodies of people. With gun, with army, with soldiers, you can rule bodies of people. Why you don't try to rule your own soul first and then win hearts of people? Why you don't try to be kind to people? He quotes also this hadith, Inna Allah yubghadul mu'min al-dha'if. Allah doesn't like a believer who is weak. He's a mu'min, but he's weak. So we are not in favor of weakness. What we say, a strength means more. And what you call a strength many times can be a weakness for human being. If someone is very jealous and very miserly and is just trying to, suppress people, we call it weakness. We don't call it a strength. So, alhamdulillah, this session finished. Then in the next session, Ayatollah Mutahari starts studying the school of mahabba, the school of love. He says this school is more presented in India and to some extent among Christians. But now we don't want to go into these associations and see whether they say it in this way or that way, whatever. We just want to see what could be a kind of understanding of Insaan Kamil and evaluate it. So we don't want to attribute anything to any group of people. If some people say that perfection for a human being is just to be kind and to love and to serve people, just opposite to what Nietzsche said. For Nietzsche, kindness was a bad thing because by helping and supporting weak people, you keep human beings weak. He says humanity should get rid of people who are weak so that only strong people remain. This idea is the opposite. We have to be kind, we have to be helping each other. It's very altruistic. He says even sometimes in our literature, there is exaggeration. For example, Ziyadi says this. Of course, maybe he wanted to bring a balance because people underestimate this. So maybe Ziyadi put it in this exaggerated way. He says, عبادت بجز خدمت خلق نیست. به تسبیح و سجاده و دلق نیست. Worship is nothing other than serving people. Worship is not a matter of tasbih or sajjada, prayer mat, or dalq. Dalq is the dress or clothes of darwish, people who are known to be darwish, faqir, the people who are choosing very simple and poor way of life for spirituality. So he says, to have these clothes is not a sign of worshiping God. To do tasbih, to be doing salat on your prayer mat, these are not signs of worship. Worship is to help people, to serve people. Allah wants us to serve each other when we are meeting people or knowing or can discover people who are in need. We should help them. This is, of course, an exaggeration because he says this is the only ibadah. But we have to understand that perhaps he means not to underestimate this. This is the real ibadah in the sense that this is a result of real ibadah. If you really worship Allah, it would lead to helping people. So this is in line with the same idea of school of love, that perfection is a matter of loving people, helping people, or khidmat bikhalq, serving people. And for these people, there is only one thing which is bad, and I mean centrally, anything bad goes to this, and that is to annoy people, to hurt people. Because to serve people is the main value, then the main vice would be to annoy people. He says, when we study the Quran, for sure, Quran asks us, not only encourages us, urges us to help, to be kind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ وَالْبَغْيِ. This ayah is a very important ayah, and this is a summary of Islam And we have the stories of how some people in the early Islam converted to Islam because of this ayah. In one of the short talks in the months of Ramadan a few years ago, when every day we were talking about one ayah which has a universal message, I mentioned some points about this ayah. So, first, justice. Justice is the red line, the minimum, but it's not enough. We need to do ihsan on top of justice. So first, make sure that you give everyone their rights, their due rights. Not that you are kind to some people and unjust to some other people. You are kind to your mother and unkind to your wife, or kind to your wife and unkind to your mother. First, observe justice with everyone, and then try to be kind to everyone except those that your kindness to them may support injustice. As much as you are concerned, you want to be kind to everyone, but if kindness is to lead to injustice, then it would be conflicting with the first instruction, which is adl. So, inna Allah ya'muru bil adl wal ihsan, and in a special way, giving to the kinship. With respect to the kinship, you have more responsibility. Wa ita'i dhil qurba. So, ihsan is such an important thing, to do good to others, to be kind to others, to be benefactor. It's very important. In another ayah, Allah says, Man ahsanu deenan man aslama wajhahu lillah wa huwa muhsin. Who is better in religion than someone who has submitted his face to God and is doing ihsan, is a benefactor. Quran talks about ithar. Allah talks about Ansar, the companions of the Prophet from Medina, Ansar. Allah praises them in this way: وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. They prefer their brothers of Muhajirin over themselves, even if they have need. There's a story in Surah Al-Hashr, number 9, about, there was a case of distributing some, booties, how Rasulullah consulted them and what they answered. يُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. Or about Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam in Surah Insaan or Halata. وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَىٰ حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. Even if they had very little food, it's not that they had extra. Even they had to give their own food, which they needed for breaking their fast. They gave it to a needy person, to an orphan, to a captive. So certainly kindness to people is very important in Islam. He brings also the expression of love as a kind of kindness. For example, the famous story that once one of the people who still had traces of akhlaq and ethos of pre-Islam era, he saw that Rasulullah is showing kindness to some of his, grandchildren, and kissing and playing, etc. He said, I have 10 children and I have never kissed them. Never kissed any of these 10 children. In one hadith, Rasulullah is described that when he heard this, فَالْتَمَعَ وَجْهُ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ, his face became red, means he was very unhappy to hear that someone has not kissed any of his children. And he said, Man la yarham, la yurham. If you don't show mercy, you will not be shown mercy. We have many cases about Rasulullah, about Imam Ali, about other Imams, how kind they were even to the people who were against them. The story of Imam Hassan Mujtaba alayhi salam, that person from Sham that was insulting, was swearing at Imam, but instead of Imam attacking him or doing anything, Imam said, it seems that you are not from this town. If you need any place, we can offer you, hospitality. So certainly love, kindness, helping people are very important. But is this the only thing? Is this the only sign of perfection, or is it the only requirement of perfection? That's another thing. Inshallah, we continue this discussion in the next week. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Jazakallah, Sheikh.
May Allah bless you.
Now the floor is open to ask questions, so please use the option for raise hand. Yes, brother Javed Akhtar, please raise your question.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
My name is
Javed Hassan Akhtar from Dera Ghazi Khan, Pakistan.
Mashallah.
Thank you very much, Aghajan. A very valuable dars on power of power. The school of power. So I have just a concern. Is there a power of sixth sense or hypnotism or whatsoever in Islam? Sixth sense.
Power of?
Sixth sense in Islam. Yes, hypnotism or whatsoever.
Yeah, I cannot understand, sir.
You cannot. There are 5 senses. Hawa se khamsa. Is there any other sense? Is there any other sense? Sixth sense?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. We didn't know it here. I was not.
Thank you.
Thank you much. Yes. Of course, sixth sense, we have to define it. But for sure, human beings, in addition to the 5 senses, they have other ways of sensing. Sometimes but you cannot trust, of course, this is not hujjah. But sometimes you meet someone and you sense something, a kind of worry. And then you realize later that this person, for example, was not sincere. Or sometimes, you are in a place, all of a sudden you think that, for example, you have to go away. It's possible. One of things that sometimes people happen to them, that, for example, there is an earthquake coming and all of a sudden they feel worried. They go outside and then earthquake, destroys the house. No one told them. There was nothing, all of a sudden there is a, kind of feeling that they have to leave this place. We have many different ways, and especially those who are very spiritual, then they understand many things. So one of people that I very much, respect and very knowledgeable and spiritual. So I heard from someone, one of his students, that, for example, in Qom once, he had a strong feeling to go to a certain place in Qom, and then to go to a certain lane, and then a certain house. And when he knocked the door, he found a very spiritual person over there. He didn't know that person is there. Just in his heart was feeling that he has to go to that place. But as I said, you cannot trust all these things, because sometimes we may make mistakes, or we may not have clear message, then we add to it. And then, so therefore, if you meet someone and you feel bad or good, you can consider this, but don't take this as a hujjah, as a proof, and say this person is definitely good or definitely bad. You have to inquire, you have to take time. If you want to, for example, marry someone, or, give answer to someone who proposed marriage, for example, sometimes you feel something, but it's not enough to use as hujjah.
Yes, next, brother Muhammad Shah, you want to ask a question? Muhammad Siftain Shah, could you please unmute yourself? Well, in a chat, he said that he wants to ask a question, but he's not able to unmute himself. Okay. So next, brother Asif. Can you unmute yourself and ask a question?
No, sir. Thank you. I'm from Kashmir.
Yeah, go ahead. Brother Asif, go ahead. So next is Dr. Aline Rضوی. Please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Assalamualaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Aline Fatima Rضوی from Islamabad, Pakistan. So I've got a couple of questions interlinked somehow. First of all, the topic that you touched upon regarding kindness. Now, this very thing is used by the so-called liberals, very specifically quoting the events from our history. For example, Imam Ali alayhi salam, after being struck in Masjid Kufa, when the culprit was brought in front of him, he asked his children to offer him a drink first. Then could you please confirm if this this narration about Imam Hussein alayhi salam is correct, that after all of his army, all of his relatives had been martyred and he was alone, even then he offered to forgive the other side if they listened to him. So that sort of stuff is used as by the liberals and people who are anti-punishment. Should I ask all the questions, or would you please answer the first one?
Ask, yes.
Okay, then regarding what the brother before me said about sixth sense, and I'm very pleased that you pointed out that without spirituality, sixth sense is not exactly reliable. So is that what happened when Masjid-e-Jamkaran was built? Because without sixth sense, without spirituality, if you're having a dream that you're, for example, flying, everybody is going to claim that we had the experience of Mi'raj. So spirituality has to be there. So is this what happened when when the boundaries of Masjid-e-Jamkaran were set? So that's my second question. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Regarding the first question, yes, actually, Ayatollah Mutahari has a discussion here about those who are against any kind of punishment or against capital punishment altogether. And he says that sometimes there is no other way. Of course, there are very carefully explained conditions in Islam for punishment, and also who can be the judge. It's not that everyone can be judged. It's not that every judge can easily make decisions, etc. But in certain cases, there is possibility of capital punishment and need for that, or for example, other types of, and we should not just be kind and say, no punishment is needed or no capital punishment is needed at all. Yes, unfortunately, in some societies, they overdo it. In some societies, for example, they are not careful. But we say there must be such a provision in law to have certain ways of dealing with very vicious criminals. What we have in the case of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam is that they never, for example, stood against Islamic code of punishment. But when it was possible and Islamic law permits, or it was something personal and again not against Islamic law, of course they were trying to forgive. They were trying people to forgive each other. Even sometimes people wanted to admit to Imam Ali when he was Khalifa about some of their sins, and they were saying for example, tahirni, clean me from this sin. But Imam trying to avoid listening to their admission and bring excuses. Maybe it didn't happen as you think, it's things like this. But they were keeping insisting to admit in the full-fledged details, and so then Imam had to execute the punishment. In the case of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, for sure, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, even not only before, but even on the day of Ashura, was hoping to offer opportunities to people to change. And this is why he was talking to them. But this doesn't mean that without their change, without their return, without their tawbah, Imam was saying that, they will be forgiven. Imam cannot forgive on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Imam can invite them for change, can invite them for return, even if they have been very, cruel to him and his family. So Ahlul Bayt never developed, hatred against people. Even, for example, Wahshi, the killer of, Hamza, Hazrat Hamza. So Rasulullah forgave him when he asked for, forgiveness. Regarding Masjid al-Jamkaran, what was there is not that it was a dream. So if you go to the website of Masjid al-Jamkaran, so they say that the details, and it was in awakeness. So they say it was in Bidari, not in Kha. If it was in the dream, then dream is not Hujjah unless there are some proof, some evidence that this dream was true. For example, something about future that you see, then it happened. Things like this. But dream in general is not Hujjah. But this was in awakeness. And there is a quotation also there from, some of great scholars that they were, in support of this story. For us today, of course, if you are not sure, and because it's very difficult to establish historical facts. You can, have reports and reliable reports, but when there is, for example, khabar wahid, even if it's a reliable person, maybe you don't become certain. But for us, it's enough if we see that this is not something that had no history, and all of a sudden, after 1,000 years, people start talking. If you see that over history, great scholars, century after century, have been showing recognition to this place, and then lots of people have said their prayer there. Lots of people go there and do dua, tawassul, and it's masjid. I think this is a good enough to make this place a place that we can feel we can be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Although you can be close to Allah in any place of worship, in any place that many people have worshipped there. But there are reliable reports, and there is a recognition and respect by our ulama. But you don't want to say you must believe in this or you must be 100% sure. No, it's not sometimes possible to be 100% sure. Many of historical details, for example, if you take any book of history, it's very difficult to say, Wallahi, all these details are from cover to cover correct. Unless something is mutawatir or, so frequently narrated that we can be certain. What is enough in history is to have reference, reliable references. So this was not based on dream or sixth sense.
Asantum. So next I throw to Sister Batul.
You are welcome. Thanks for your questions, and may Allah bless you, inshallah.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
My question is about quote you shared of Amir al-Mu'minin al-Islam. Ghibat to mostly weak people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please explain little more.
Yeah, so those who are not able to do anything for themselves or for other people, then they just look for opportunity to talk against other people. Even if, for example, they are mazloom, okay, carry on with your life, do other things. What's the benefit? Yes, if there is a person that can help you against zulm, here it's okay. Quran says, La yuhibbullahu al-jahra bis-su'i min al-qawl illa man zulim. Allah doesn't want you to talk in public about bad things happen to you unless you are mazloom. And ulama say mazloom can do tazallum. What does it mean? Can go, for example, to someone who has power to help him, like the judge, a qualified judge, and say, or sometimes ulama can help that, my neighbor, or my husband, my colleague, they are doing zulm to me, for example. And you need someone to help you to stop them. In these cases, maybe okay. But then what's the benefit of ghibah? It's just a matter of temporarily releasing your anger, but it's not helping, and also sometimes it can create more problem that the person hears, then it becomes more hostile towards you, and also it's a sin, ghibah, unless there are exceptional cases that are defined in fiqh. So Amir al-Mu'minin says, do something positive, do something productive. For example, if you are a student and your classmate has done bad thing to you, okay, talk to him, whatever is needed, but don't get stuck here. Study more, learn other skills, do as much as you can to improve yourself, to bring goodness to yourself and other people, not getting stuck just with backbiting. So people who are, for example, we hear about some of the scholars, for example, Imam Musa Sadr. Some people, unfortunately, were talking against him, even inside the Shia community. Sometimes even some scholars were against him. But he was never talking against anyone. Even he was not talking about them in their presence. And there was a majlis that one of the scholars who has many books was on member, and when he saw Imam Musa Sadr, he started on member talking against him. Maybe he felt responsible, I don't know. He talked against Imam Musa Sadr, and Imam Musa Sadr, when he came down from member, was supposed to speak after him. He hugged him and thanked him and sat on member and didn't say anything. He could have used member to, defend himself, to attack that person. So those who worked with him, they say he never complained about anyone. The late Ayatollah al-Uzma said, Hadi Milani in Mashhad. He was a marja, he was great marja in Mashhad. So many times, people, even sometimes his own students, talked against him, but he never defended himself because they have much more to do and they ask Allah to defend them. Inna Allah yudafi'u 'an alladhina amanu. Allah defends the believers. I'm not saying you have to not answer when needed, but I'm saying you have to have such control over your nafs that if you need to answer, it's not because you are angry. Sometimes we have to tell the truth. Otherwise, people keep, repeating the rumors against us, whatever. But not just as an emotional reaction that, I feel bad, I have to do something to defend myself. No, for the sake of cause, if needed, with the least of personal attachments, you explain things. Sorry, just a moment. Someone is... Yes.
Yes, Zara, can you please ask your question? This is the last question for the session.
Okay. I'm not in your Assalamu alaikum, Maulana.
Alaikum salam.
I came late. I don't know the verse. I don't know the subject. But the question is for Quran.
Yeah.
And I heard long ago there is a different Musaf in different writings. In some of the countries we know the one Quran, but there is a different meanings. The actual meaning is different, but the people writing style is different in other countries. Do you know anything about that? Because some I don't know in your where you live in London.
Yes.
You live in London? Okay. I heard some of the London people, they criticize and talk about the Quran, and there is 26 Musaf. Maybe you know that.
No.
You have a park over there, is a very famous park. Some of the people doing the criticize, and it's a very bad. Maybe I heard many things and I see on the YouTube, and they did that, and they criticize about Islam and the Muslims because they don't know how many Quran they have. Maybe you know that, so just tell us.
I haven't heard especially about London, but in any case, what we have is we have different qira'at, different recitations. So there are 7 qira'at which are mutawatir in the Muslim world, and there are many which are not that famous. But the one that we normally, and also in most of Muslim countries, they normally use is qira'ah of Hafs and Asim. So Hafs from Asim, which actually goes back to Amir al-Mu'minin. So alhamdulillah, this is the most popular recitation. The difference is not that much. In some words, sometimes it's a matter of different pronunciation, and sometimes they can make different meaning. For example, is Malik Yawmuddin or Malik Yawmuddin. Sometimes it can make a little change in the meaning. But the most popular one is Hafs from Asim, which is what we normally use. In addition to qira'at, we have writing styles. So kitaba. For example, in many places nowadays, for example, they use the writing of Osman Taha. For example, there's a special way of putting alif, or there's a special way of designing every page. So they design every page in the way that it begins with the verse and ends with the verse. So no verse goes to the next page. These are writing styles. In Iran, some Marajas suggested, for example, to have a special writing which is clearer for people and easier. So there are some issues of writing which is kept from before. So for example, even sometimes, according to Arabic grammar, there shouldn't be alif after the first siqa. If you know sarf, for example, yad'u. Yad'u doesn't have alif. But early generations, when they were writing Quran, sometimes they put alif where this is not need. And although this is not about revelation, but Muslims, in order to keep things as early centuries, they have kept even these things so that there is no change. But these are just the way people wrote it. And today you can write it in different way. What is important is that the words, the letters must not change. The pronunciation must not change. But writing, you can write it in different ways. Now even, the Quran, which is published in, for example, Pakistan, India, maybe it's different from what is published in Saudi Arabia, the letters, etc., the fonts. But that's not a big thing. The main thing is recitation. And as long as they follow one of those reliable recitations, especially Hafs from Asim, that's fine.
Thank you, Aka, for this answering this question. Just a quick reminder for the interest of all participants. Yeah. Our preference is that questions should be asked around the theme of the topic deliberations that is covered by Sheikh. Otherwise, we are wasting our time for the other participants. Sheikh, I can see 2 more raised hands. Can we take those questions or leave it for
we can take one more, inshallah.
Okay, Sister Farad, can you unmute yourself and pose your question? Sister Farad.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
First of all, I am sorry I could not hear the lecture from the beginning. Inshallah, I will hear it later in the recording. But the last lecture, which was the first one from the power section, I heard it and I had a question, but unfortunately I ran out of time. My question is regarding the topic of power. The question is, it's a very simple question. Maybe my participant would say that she is so unknowledgeable that she doesn't know. But this question is from daily life. Like when we have servants or maids, which we have in our house, and sometimes they don't behave, sometimes they don't listen, sometimes they don't comply to the rules and regulations of the household. And I mean, it's my own example that I have forgiven them. I have just ignored their mistakes and their misbehavior several times, just because of Khawf-e Khuda. Khawf-e Khuda, because he has given me power, he has given me everything. So I should not be harsh, I should not be stubborn, I should not be cruel or something like that. Alhamdulillah, we are not like that. So I have forgiven them and overlooked their mistakes. But over time, they have not learned. They have not complied to the rules and regulations. They have not, rectified their mistakes. So now I have asked them to leave, and politely, very politely, I asked them and I told them, see, if you make a mistake, you should say, I'm sorry. Apology is there. But if they don't even apologize, then it is a stubborn behavior. I explained them that this is a wrong behavior. Even Allah Ta'ala doesn't like it. If we commit a sin, he expects us to say, Astaghfirullah, I'm sorry, I will not do it again. But you people don't listen. So I have asked them to leave, and I have just, fired them in our day-to-day language. Is this a wrong use of power? I'm very, very afraid that my God should not be, he should not feel, he is all knowing, he knows my near. But I was very disturbed. Have I done a wrong thing by firing them? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And can they find another job?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. There are several jobs, but at this moment, I don't know, because since I have fired them, I don't know where they have found, or they have still looking or not. But they are in demand. They will find it, inshallah. And I ask them to leave with prayers that, inshallah, you will find a good place. But due to this behavior, I had to fire you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's very difficult situation with the servants, or even when you are a manager, you have employees.
Yeah.
Because on the one side you want efficiency, you want everything be organized. On the other hand, you have ethical responsibilities, and as a Muslim manager or employer, you consider everyone like your own family. You want their own good as well. And sometimes, for example, we expect from our children to be better in their behavior, but they are not. We keep, and they are not. What we do, we have to be patient, but we have to also do tarbiyah. It's not just to listen to them, or if just ignore. But tarbiyah is something that takes time, takes energy, needs patience. So what I can say in general way is that you try not to be angry with them, but try to step by step, gradually working on improvement of their performance. Whether they apologize or not, that is something secondary. They should, but if they don't, but just improve, this is enough. Because sometimes maybe it's difficult for them to say, I made mistake. For us, the main thing is that they don't do this again, not that they apologize. So with patience, you try to help them to improve. This is good for them as well. And even if they go to other places, they will be appreciated more. But to fire them, you have to see if, for example, they are going to suffer, they are not going to find another job, and their family is going to struggle, then maybe you need to be patient, more patient. But if they can find another job easily, then that's easier. You can say, with respect, I have tried, this time, for example, and it didn't work. You are a good person, but maybe we cannot work together. And I pray for you. I give you some gift also. So that ends peacefully and nicely. But if they cannot find another job, then it's difficult, unless you really suffer and So I have had this problem sometimes where I have worked that there are employees that I don't find them useful that much, but then I'm concerned, about their, family, etc., whether they can find another job. They have worked, for example, in this place for many years. So it's very difficult to be both efficient and ethical. You can be just ethical and you can be just efficient, but to be both, it's very difficult. And we have to learn and we have to ask Allah for help. But we have actually cases that, for example, in the case of Imams alayhimus salam, that sometimes there's, servants were not very obedient sometimes. For example, once one of the Imams said to his servant to do something and he didn't do it. The Imam said, why you didn't listen? He said, Amintuka. He said, because I felt safe. I knew that you are not going to beat me or do anything harsh. Amintuka. Allama Tabatabai, someone said, it's in Hadith Sarf documentary. Allama Tabatabai had an old person that was helping him. Maybe even this person says maybe it was coming from their own city, So at some time he had someone to help him. He said, once I was talking with Allama Tabatabai, and his servant seemed that was sleeping, something like this. And when he heard us talking, or maybe he knocked the door and, he was sleeping. So he said to Allama, Mage sar avardi. In Farsi, when someone, knocks the door, quickly, or, asks us to go quickly, we say Mage sar avardi, means have you brought a head, something like this. Means is there something urgent? And Allama told him, look, the way he behaves with me. But he was not, reacting. So patience is needed, but at the same time, tarbiyah. And make them, learn things. So I hope, inshallah, Allah helps us in all these cases, because actually these are real life scenarios where we need to be very much working on our own selves to learn how to deal with these cases, to be very ethical, but at the same time to make sure that we make progress towards our aims, our legitimate aims.
Thank you.
May Allah bless you, inshallah.
MashaAllah, you have a very good wisdom, MashaAllah. It's very difficult to find people like you nowadays.
May Allah bless you, inshallah.
Okay, I just pray and conclude this session.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma kulli waliyika al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan salawatuka alayhi wa ala aba'ih fi hadhihi as-sa'ah wa fi kulli sa'ah waliyan wa hafidan wa qa'idan wa nasira wa dalilan wa 'ayna hatta tuskinahu ardaka taw'a wa tumatta'ahu fiha tabila. غمن علينا برضاه وهب لنا رأفته ورحمته ودعاءه وخيره. Oh Allah, please send your salutations to Muhammad and all Muhammad. Please bless the souls of all marhumin, especially those who have rights upon us. Please bless our parents who are alive with health and dignity, and those who have passed away with generosity and kindness to them. And please give shafa to all people who are ill, people that have asked for dua, people that we are concerned for them. Give shafa to all ill people, please. And please make faraj of Imam al-Zaman easy and soon, and enable us to help him and serve him before and after he comes. Ameen ya Rabbal Alamin.